Every once in a while, in your manufacturing process, you lose time on Mondays due to the drying kiln step taking 11 hours to cure a tablet coating instead of the normal 6.5 hours. Batches manufactured on Monday then have to be cured on Tuesday and so forth. Sometimes this happens during the week as well, leading you to believe that there is a problem with the raw materials. Production has to add overtime to the budget on occasions because the slowdown is a bottleneck in the process that cannot be accounted for. You have contacted the raw material suppliers with your concerns, and they have sat in on the manufacturing process throughout the week and on the weekends. When they are around, there isn't a problem. Raw material tests and quality assurance indicate that there is virtually no variation in raw material quality from batch to batch. A close study of batches shows that the batches made with exactly the same raw materials can show this problem as well. You are at wit's end, perhaps believing there is no real reason for this problem and that you must just accept the fact that some batches will from time to time slow production. Then you ask the LIMS administrator to use his Anova test to determine where the problem is and what causes it. Later that afternoon, the LIMS administrator tells you that there is one employee who has had one specific raw material added at excessive levels. He shows you that the batchmaster brought in on overtime forgets to reset his scales between raw materials from pounds to kilograms, and adds excessive amounts of soya lecithin as a wetting agent for the titanium dioxide. Production likes this guy because his batches grind quickly and his samples come off the production line with very low levels of variation in QC. Unfortunately, the soya is very slow to dry in the curing kilns and almost doubles the rate of dry time required to get packaged. On the other hand, the LIMS administrator tells you that the rate of grind and manufacture time for this employee is so significant that the lost time in the kilns are more than adequately accounted for in production levels. The LIMS administrator points out that instead of retraining that employee to operate his equipment correctly, you would improve your production rate by simply adding more kilns and rewriting your formulations to increase the soya to the levels used by mistake. Then retrain all the batch mixers to take care in the use of their measuring equipment. Anova, the analysis of variation methods, allows the LIMS system to review past batches based upon material usages and manufacturing data that has been recorded in the past without interfering with batch processes at all. These variations are recorded by digital signatures, equipment monitoring, and raw material levels input by the employees. In the instance above, the LIMS monitored the digital signature of the employee who was associated with each of the batches that were slow. It monitored the condition of the digital scale used at the workstation and whether that scale read pounds or kilos, and it measured the level of soya in the soya supply tank. The LIMS system went further by measuring the timeliness of batch production associated with the batches in question, and did a comparative study in the production rate if the kiln process was not a factor. From this data, you doubled the number of kilns, changed your formulas, and increased your production rates by 17% for that particular line of product. The LIMS just did what everyone in your company and everyone in the raw material supply company could not do. Instead of accepting your fate and allowing the lost time of manufacture as well as paying for unnecessary overtime throughout the week, you have increased your product throughput and produced a better product. LIMS to the rescue. That is, if the LIMS administrator understands the system he is working with. Please understand that the LIMS administrator had to know raw material supplies, batch process, statistics, data control with digital signatures, control points in the P&ID, and the bottom line production value of the process he was evaluating. The LIMS administrator also had to sell you on the idea. Consider, though, that this LIMS administrator gave you this data in hours when no one else could give you a clue in weeks of study.